Hello, today we're going to talk about function notation. So, a function behaves like a machine. You input something into the machine and you get back out a certain value, which is your output, which is y. Whatever you input is what your x is, whatever you get back out is y. So, it says using the machine to the right, what is the output if the -7 is the input? So, what they're saying here is if I put -7 in, what do I get back out? Well, it says here that you put -7 in, and then this says in the middle that you multiply the input by 3, and then you subtract 8. So I know that 3 times -7 is -21, and -21 minus 8 is a -29. So I know that -29 would be the output. So what you need to also realize is that equations that represent functions are often written in function notation. So you should remember this from prior math classes. Y is the same thing as saying f of x. Okay, f of x. So if we have y is equal to f of x, then I know that instead of me writing this as y equals, I can write this as f of x equals 3x minus 8. That's how that will be written in function notation. Remember that y and f of x are the same. They are both outputs. Now, what you do need to be careful of is that you need to be careful to not read this as multiplication. This does not say f times x. F is pretty much a name. This is actually read as f of x. Okay, that's how that is read. All right. So now what we also need to realize is that sometimes y is equal to f of x. Sometimes that is also looked at as the function value, or what we like to call our image of x. Okay. And I want to put a little note here that remember that x is your input and that f of x is your output. Okay, because remember f of x and y is your output. So now make sure you keep in mind that if we wanted to write these as points, we will write the point as x, y, or we can write our points now as x, comma, f of x. Okay, that is how we write points in function notation. Okay, so now let's look at example 1. It says, if f of x is equal to 3x squared minus 2x, find that value of f of 5. So as you can see here, I turned my x's into 5s. Now what I would suggest that you do is that you should place parentheses where your x's are before you start putting your numbers in it or substituting into it. So here I write this as 3 parentheses squared minus 2 times whatever goes in my parentheses. And then I will literally say, okay, well, x is 5. So I know here that I will have to put in 5. Okay, so I know that 5 squared is 25. So that's going to be 3 times 25. No, you cannot do 3 times 5 first. You have to handle the exponents first. And this is going to be minus 2 times 5. So 3 times 5 is 75. 2 times 5 is 10. So I got to subtract 10, which will end up giving me 65. So here, f of 5 is equal to 65. Now, if I want to write that as a point, I can write it as a point. So the point that represents this is going to be 565. That's my point. Let's look at B. Same thing, except I'm substituting in -4. So remember, whenever you substitute, you want to just put parentheses there. So that's going to be equals 3 times something squared minus 2 times whatever goes in there. So we know that -4 is where x used to be. So I'm going to put -4 here and here. So then let's start simplifying. -4 squared is a positive 16 because a -4 times a -4 is a positive 16. We have -2 times -4 comes down. 3 times 16 is 48. -2 times -4 is a positive 8. And 48 plus 8 is 56. And I know that the point that represents this is going to be written as -4, 56. That is the point, right? So now let's look at example 2. So example 2 is saying that we just want to write these equations in simplest form. So that means that they may not actually be a number, but it should be able to be simplified. So once again, we have to substitute in to the parentheses. So write it with the parentheses first before substituting in. So here, if we have 7 minus 3 times whatever x is, plus we take whatever x is and then we square it, then I know I can substitute in where x is. I can put in what is in here. So that's -3x. So I put in -3x, -3x. So now all I do is multiply. So 7 comes down. -3 times -3 is a positive 9x. And -3x squared is a positive 9x squared. Okay. And if you want to, you can write it in the order of, write it in standard form as 9x squared plus 9x plus 7. It does not matter. Okay. So now let's look at B. Same thing. What we want to do is rewrite this, but put parentheses before you plug in. So that's 7 minus 3 times something, plus take that, whatever you're plugging in, and then you square it. So what are we plugging in? It says that x becomes x minus 4. So I'm going to replace these with all x minus 4s. Now you should know when you have a binomial square, that means you write something twice. So this is -7 times 3 times, -7 minus 3 times x minus 4 plus x minus 4 times another x minus 4, because squaring something means to multiply by itself. So then what we do is we start simplifying. So that is going to be 7, and then we have to distribute. So that is going to be -3 times x is -3x. -3 times -4 is a positive 12. And then I'm going to distribute and multiply these two binomials. So x times x and x times -4 is going to give me a positive x squared and a -4x. And then -4 has to be distributed through. So that's going to be -4x plus 16. All right. And then we can just combine like terms. So here we will have x squared is going to come down. I don't have nothing to combine with it. And then we are going to add up all of our x's. So -3 minus 4 is -7. Minus 4 more is -11. So that's -11x. And then we have 7 plus 12 plus 16, which is going to give us 35. So x squared minus 11 plus 35, that is your answer. All right, in simplified form. So part C is very similar, except we have subtracting 42 off to the side, and that's fine. So the first thing we handle is the f of x plus 6. So f is 7 minus 3 times whatever we're going to plug in, plus whatever we're going to plug in squared, and then off to the side should be a minus 42. Okay, so when we have that, remember, we are just plugging in x plus 6. So if I have x plus 6 here, x plus 6 here. So we simplify the same way that we've done before. 7, and then we distribute the negative 3. So that's going to be negative 3x minus 18, because we know that a negative times a positive is a negative. And then we also should know that we need to multiply this out twice. Matter of fact, let me bring this step down really quick, because I just don't want no confusion. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to keep this like this first. Then I'm going to write this out twice. I'm not going to skip that step because I don't want nobody to get confused. All right. So if we start multiplying x times x, we get x squared. X times 6 is 6x. 6 times x is 6x. And 6 times 6 is 36. And then, of course, bring down the negative 42. So now we can then simplify. So x squared does not have a like term. We have negative 3x plus 6x, which is a positive 3x, plus 6x, which is 9x. So that's going to be x squared plus 9x. And then we have 7 minus 18 plus 36 minus 42. And that gives us a negative 17. So here we have x squared plus 9x minus 17. That is the simplified form of this. All right. So now let's look at our last example for application problem. It says Chelsea is throwing her daughter a birthday party. The total cost, C, of renting a venue for T hours is modeled by the equation C of T is equal to 125 T plus 50. So they told you that C by itself represents the total cost. The T on the inside represents the hours. So when I have C of 4, they're saying the cost for 4 hours. So all I have to do is substitute in. So I'm going to have C of 4 is equal to 125 times 4 plus 50, because remember, 4 is replacing the T. So if I do 125 times 4 plus 50, I end up getting 550. So what this means is that the cost for renting a venue for 4 hours is $550. Okay, that's what that means. I always have to explain what it means. So if we look at B, it says if C of T is equal to 925, find T to explain what this means. So this is saying the cost for T hours is equal to 925. So that means that 925 replaces the entire C of T. So that's going to be 925 is equal to 125 times T plus 50. So if I go in the calculator, I have to subtract 50 on both sides. That's going to end up giving me 875 is equal to 125 T. And then I have to divide 875 by 125. And that gives me that T is equal to 7. So I can say here, the venue cost $925 to rent for 7 hours. All right, so that will be my interpretation there. So remember, not only do you have to have the answer, but you have to interpret. You have to tell what that answer means. So I'm going to make sure I highlight the explanation so that you make sure you have to give both of them. All right. And then the last question is asking how much was the deposit to hold the date for the venue. So your deposit is basically your base value or your initial value. So we can say the base or initial cost. So we know that the base or the initial cost is in our equation, which is $50 because that's the lowest amount that you will pay. So I know that my base or initial cost will be $50. If you have any questions on function notation, please ask your teacher and have a great day.